Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X on this Thursday, the 25th of September in the calendar year 2025. As I come to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. And just hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Clouds and storms over here in Cincinnati. Got rained on real hard earlier in the evening as I was leaving my place of employment, but I made it home safe, and I just made it come home tonight. And tonight is more like an unsolved mysteries version of Sir Han on X, as there's two historical moments that had many questions gone unanswered, but bigger mysteries as to why everything happened for various reasons. And I would take the deep dive, bring out the shovel, take the extra deep, go to the extra well, and see if I can scoop them up. Lots to get to here tonight. It's basically boxing centric, so I'm going to check right down to it. The first one we're going to talk about is what took place 63 years ago today at Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois. Yes, that Comiskey Park, the home of the Major League Baseball's Chicago White Sox. It was a big fight town once upon a time. And that's what this was when you talk about the first of two meetings between Sonny Liston and Floyd Patterson. After Rocky Marciano hung it up, Floyd Patterson and Sonny Liston were paralleled as the next big things. For various reasons, for different reasons. And basically, you talk about a different universe, one versus the other. You can't get more different than Sonny Liston and Floyd Patterson. Sonny Liston, the troubled young man out of Las Vegas. Floyd Patterson, the good looks individual out of Brooklyn, New York, trained by Cus-D'Amato. And for you Mike Tyson fanatics, before Cus-D'Amato brought the world Mike Tyson, he had Floyd Patterson, and that was the project. That was Floyd Patterson. When you talk about their path to this particular fight, couldn't get more polar opposite in and out of the ring. And it's been well chronicled. I'll try to simplify this the best I can because it's simple, but also complex in the same sentence. We're going to start with Floyd Patterson here real quick. After Marciano retired, he fought Archie Moore for the vacant heavyweight championship and became the youngest ever to win the championship when he stopped Moore to win the title. When you talk about the career of Floyd Patterson, a very unique style, just out of the peekaboo style, just like Tyson fans saw on Mike Tyson, Floyd Patterson was virtually the exact same way. Out of the peekaboo style, very quick, deceptive power, especially with that left hook. I'll touch on his second fight with Mario Hansen here in a second. But basically, lived a disciplined life for the most part outside of the ring, especially under the tutelage of Cus-D'Amato. Very disciplined, very down-to-earth good guy, one of the great guys you'll ever meet. And when you talk about Patterson and his rise to the top, stayed on a straight and narrow, got the title win over Moore. And we talk about what he did after his fight with Moore. Made three successful title defenses against guys like Pete Rademacher, Roy Harris, and Brian London. But then came his well-known historic trilogy with the standout Mario Hansen. His first fight in 1959, loses the heavyweight title on a third round knockout where he was floored 7 times in the third round and basically just got the brakes beaten off of him. But exactly a year later, he got the rematch with Johansson and basically had the left hook of perfection that had Johansson down and out cold. Many thought Johansson was dead in the ring when Patterson floored him with that left hook. And when he floored him with that left hook, Patterson became the first fighter in boxing history to regain the heavyweight championship that he lost, and also the only one to regain the heavyweight title from the guy who beat him previously, that being Mario Hansen. And fast forward 7 months later, they had the third encounter where it was a slugfest. Patterson would find a way to stop Johansson in 6 rounds, and a knockdown drag-out trilogy between Patterson and Johansson, historically talked about. And Patterson seemed to have we found himself, especially after the second fight, it was trending upward as the heavyweight champion of the world. So that was the angle of Floyd Patterson. Now we're going to go to the myth and probably one of the bigger mysteries in all walks of life, especially in the boxing culture, none other than Charles Sonny Liston. Well chronicled the track record he has. I mean, the guy has an arrest record so big. I mean, not even the national debt could compare to his track record, and it was pretty thick. And basically, coming out of prison, fought for the Chicago Gloves title, got a victory as an amateur over Ed Sanders that prompted him to go professional. Early in his career, he faced capable opponents, and we talk about the criminal record and his personal association with various racketeers, which we know back then is classified as a mob back in those days. Sonny Liston still found his way up the ranks. And he basically got a title eliminator win over Howard King just to get position himself for a fight against Floyd Patterson. The real mysteries started to begin because there was a question as to how Liston got to this point, especially with his affiliations in and out of the ring, which was well chronicled at that time. The track record, being in and out of prison. Some way, somehow, here he is now, the number one contender for the heavyweight title held by Floyd Patterson. Still a myth, still a mystery as to how this happened. For the longest time after he became the number one contender, being Sonny Liston, the Patterson people did all they could to avoid a fight with Sonny Liston for various and many reasons. And there are many of them. I can go into details as to how it is. But when you think about the fact they don't want to fight because they knew Patterson's chance against Liston wasn't necessarily great, because Liston had this ideology of being an invincible force and an unstoppable, immovable object at the time, sort of like before this fellow named George Foreman came around. Sonny Liston struck fear into many fighters. A lot of guys didn't want to fight this guy. I mean, I'll touch on a couple of them after I conclude this particular fight, because it tells you how intimidating Sonny Liston was. After the longest time, because of Customato's belief, Patterson didn't have a chance due to the affiliations of the mob and gangsters that Liston involved himself with. They finally agreed to the fight of September 25th, 1962 at Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois, albeit under some odd and mysterious circumstances. Lots of dark cloud surrounding this buildup, especially when you consider the background and the head scratcher of what Sonny Liston was out of the ring. I mean, nobody even knew what his actual birthday was when they tried to do the tail of the tape. I mean, they said he was born, I forgot what his date was. Nobody knows. I mean, he doesn't even have an official birth certificate. That's the biggest mystery when it comes to Sonny Liston, among many others. But they finally agreed to this fight. Floyd Patterson said pretty much, if this guy beats me, fine. But I want to be known as the one who didn't duck anyone and fought the best. And he went ahead and gone through with it. So we fast forward to the night of September 25th, 1962 at Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois. The story here was the size and the jab of Liston was just too much. Basically, Patterson tried to get aside the jab and close the distance, but the strength of Liston was just too much. To the first round, the big hook by Liston that hurt Patterson, and then another left hook that another left hook on Patterson's jaw that put Patterson down and out for the count at 2:06 of the first round. And Sonny Liston's your heavyweight champion of the world. Odd circumstances, we get to this point, odd backgrounds, especially from the view of Sonny Liston, but he hit the pedestal. One of the more explosive coming out parties in heavyweight title history, as I chronicled among one of them last night. The myth and the pariah of Sonny Liston finally arrived. And how he got to this point is still an eyebrow raiser, because Sonny Liston we talk about trials and turbulences. No one had it more like Sonny Liston. A lot of it is a mystery as to how it is, who he affiliated with, and why he did. But in that ring, when he got into that ring, he found a way to balance the two, his in and out of the ring. And what he did to Floyd Patterson in one round 63 years ago tonight at Comiskey Park was Exhibit A. A powerful force, one of the premier jabs in all of boxing history, put it on full display. The first jab he hit Patterson with, you can tell the fight was over. I mean, Patterson tried to get inside it and get close to Liston, who was a strong human being. But Liston basically was just too much, and Patterson was just over his head by that point. But all due respect to Floyd Patterson for taking the fight at a time when nobody wanted to fight Sonny Liston. I mean, we point to a lot of reasons for it in the ring, the affiliations, among many other things. But the weird story of this one was, despite a one round obliteration that took place, and it was a wipeout. The left hook by Liston, Patterson down 8, 9, 10 for the count. This was forced to have a rematch because for Patterson to go through with this fight, he wanted a rematch clause in the contract, and that's what he got when it comes to this particular situation. Granted, it was a one-round wipeout. It made you wonder, can Floyd Patterson find a way to improve? Well, the rematch takes place 10 months later, and we talk about this particular rematch in Miami, Florida. The same thing. Liston was a 4-1 favorite. Patterson, though, started out better, but the end of the story, once again, Sonny Liston too strong. The left hooks of Floyd Patterson 3 times in the first round. Liston retains a heavyweight championship. And the story of this particular rematch, one of the first times in fight history where both fighters net a figure north of $1.4 million. One of the first times anyone reached that figure, because that was how highly anticipated Sonny Liston, Floyd Patterson was in that particular rematch. Basically, at that point, Floyd Patterson, who was loved by everyone, was Sonny Liston, who was hated by everyone at that point, given his affiliations, was booed out of the arenas in both fights with Floyd Patterson. And even Sonny Liston said, "Nobody likes me. I don't care. They have to find someone to come along and beat me at some point." That's what we had with Liston, Patterson 1 and 2. Now the second fight had the first round as the Ring Magazine round of the year. It was a great first round of the rematch till Liston's strength took over. But everything in and out of the ring, regards to the circumstance of both of these fights, and especially when you talk about Sonny Liston, still remained a mystery for the longest time and a dark cloud that hovered, because there was a lot of unknown variables that no one could figure out the mathematics to. And that's what we had when you talk about Sonny Liston versus Floyd Patterson. And it was 63 years ago today at Comiskey Park. The first of those two fights happened, and the world was introduced to this pariah. And this pariah named Sonny Liston just obliterated one of the boxing's, quote, good guys, end quote, at least in the public of the boxing intelligentsia, and Floyd Patterson. I mean, just starched them. The left hook, Patterson didn't even bother beating the count. But all the mysteries I had before, during, and after this fight, and even after the rematch, which was their next fight almost a year later, still raises a lot of questions, especially when you talk about the fact that why would they agree to a rematch clause in a fight that was a one-round wipeout? Later, when it turns out this rematch clauses were voted to be suspended indefinitely at that point, given how one-sided the rematch was compared to the first fight. That's one thing that happened. I mean, we get it. A one-round wipeout in the first fight. So what happens? They agree to a return match. Same result happened, a one-round wipeout. But we talk about the reputation of both fighters, and we know about the reputation of Sonny Liston. And it's still something the fight community tries to grasp. Because we talk about intimidating figures, just in terms of pure intimidation, Sonny Liston was it. I mean, after this fight, Henry Cooper, who was a pegged opponent at one point, basically said, I'm not getting in the ring with Sonny Liston. No way. No way. I mean, he was a contender in the middle of Liston's run as champion before the first fight with Cassius Clay. I'll touch on that in a second. But Henry Cooper blunt said, I ain't getting in the ring with this guy. That's how intimidating Sonny Liston was. And the way he just blasted Floyd Patterson twice in the first round on both occasions tells you how intimidating that guy was. And, Ingmar Johansson, Floyd Patterson countless times. I mean, but nobody was intimidated by Johansson. Everybody was intimidated by Sonny Liston. That's also why Custom Motto did everything he could to avoid the Patterson-Liston fight the first time, because he knew this was coming. And as a result, we had it. It had to happen because Liston was Patterson's mandatory, and they had to go through with it. And that's what happened at Comiskey Park 62 years ago. And the mystery of Sonny Liston will forever be one of the bigger head scratchers in and out of the ring. When you talk about the mystery of Liston, fast forward from the second fight about 7 months later in the same arena, Miami, Florida, when he met a young upstart from Louisville, Kentucky named Cassius Clay. And Cassius Clay basically just talked up a storm to show the whole world that the Sonny Liston was no bad man. I mean, he had all the rhymes, he had all the riddles, showed up in a bear suit to Sonny Liston's camp, among many other things. And what got into that ring, Sonny Liston was a different animal on that night when Cassius Clay just gave a boxing lesson and a beating and made Liston quit on the stool. And there's still the image that goes around today of that night on February 25th, 1964, was Sonny Liston, the most intimidating man in boxing history at the time, and as a near 8-1 favorite, with his face pounded in, quitting on the stool against Cassius Clay in between rounds 6 and 7. And there's still one of the bigger mysteries surrounding what happened from the night he obliterated Floyd Patterson in the 2 fights to that night he quit against Cassius Clay in the first encounter, February 25th, 1964. Now that spawns off, we know, to what happened a little more than a year later over in Lewiston, Maine. Now Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston in the rematch. The punch that everyone still wonders if it hit him or not. The Phantom Punch. What happened? It's still a mystery. Everyone's going to have their conspiracy theories about it. Especially the conspiracy theorists. We have conspiracy theorists in sports, conspiracy theorists in politics, among many other things. But when you talk about Ali Liston too, the conspiracy theorists really come out with some of the wildest and weirdest theories. I get it. It was even then too. It was even then what took place 60 years ago in Lewiston, Maine. People then were wondering what the heck happened. How did it get to that point? Maybe in conclusion, we should have seen it all along. When you're an intimidating figure, the way Sonny Liston was for the longest time, and we trace back to what he did 63 years ago in Comiskey Park when he obliterated Floyd Patterson, to 10 months later in Miami when he obliterated Patterson in the second fight, to quitting on the stool against Cassius Clay, to the Phantom Punch in the rematch. Maybe this is who Sonny Liston was at the end of the day. Because you can be intimidating against virtually anyone you want. I mean, the coin phrase front runner wasn't used back then. I mean, there's another term I don't remember off the top of my head because we're talking about the 1950s and 60s here. But once Sonny Liston met his match on February 25th, 1964 against Cassius Clay, and he quit on the stool after getting his face pounded in and a boxing lesson, that was all she wrote. Because it goes back to what I talked about before. Don't know what it goes through a fighter's psyche when he takes that kind of a beating. And maybe at the end of the day, Sonny Liston, though he wasn't legitimately intimidating, but at the end of the day, wasn't as intimidating as perception-wise would be. Maybe for that era he was. For that era, he was. It's a no-brainer. He was. I mean, guys like Henry Cooper said, "I ain't fighting this guy," which raises a question: was he not wanting to fight Sonny Liston because Sonny Liston was that bad man, or he didn't want to fight Sonny Liston because of Sonny Liston's affiliations? That rubbed off the boxing intelligentsia the wrong way. I mean, even before the first Liston-Patterson fight, Camacho basically denounced it, saying, "What are you doing hanging out with these guys? You're too good for this." The track record of Sonny Liston out of the ring spoke volumes for itself. And what he did 63 years ago when he obliterated Floyd Patterson was basically why the original perception was he was the baddest man on the planet. Because to obliterate that great of a fighter twice in one round, the way he did to Floyd Patterson, he arrived. After that, of course, the night of February 25th, 1964, where he quit on the stool after getting his face beaten and pounded by Clay. And the mysterious night that took place 6.5 months after that, 13 months after that at Lewiston, Maine, the rematch between Ali and Liston, known as the Phantom Punch, where everyone's still wondering what happened. And it brings out the conspiracy theorists, because you can bring up all the conspiracy theories you want. Maybe in hindsight, we've seen it with guys like that. We saw it with Mike Tyson when he fought Buster Douglas. Maybe the same thing happened with Sonny Liston when he fought Cassius Clay. He met a guy who wasn't going to be intimidated, who knew how to beat him, who was extremely confident, and once that confidence of Liston is broken as an intimidating figure, party's over. That's probably what happened to the up and down trend of Sonny Liston from the night he won the title, tracing down to the night he quit against Clay, and the Phantom Punch in the rematch in Lewiston, Maine. Still a mystery. The conspiracy theorists will always come out. And it is still something everybody wonders what happened. People are still asking that question 60 years later, because even after I talked about it earlier in the summer, I was even asked a question, what do I think happened? What I think happened was Sonny Liston was mentally destroyed by Clay in the first fight, to where the second fight happened, the guy was a corpse. That's the conclusion I could come up with. Everyone's going to have theirs, but that's probably the common denominator you could probably come up with at the end of the day. Because we've seen it happen. Once the bully is tamed and is beat up, he's not as intimidating as you think he is. Case closed. More Sonny Liston stuff down the line, I'm quite sure, because he's had, a tantalizing, polarizing figure. Actually, for you, people who are into sports documentaries, the Showtime app has a documentary called Pariah, the Sonny Liston story. Tells you what kind of a polarizing figure he was. Even Mike Tyson said he was more intimidating than he was at his best. That's all you need to know. Now we go to another night of mystery. And this one, before, during, and after, had all kinds of questions for the longest time. This was an HBO doubleheader that co-featured Edwin Rosario and Hector Camacho. The spinoff of this was a doubleheader 3.5 months after their super fight of June 13, 1986, where Camacho got felt, especially that left hook in the 5th round by Rosario, and escaped with a decision. But a lot of questions regarding both fighters going into this doubleheader that took place in Miami, Florida, 39 years ago tonight. Edwin Rosario is fighting Livingstone Bramble. He was basically pegged as a fill-in because Bramble had the payday against Hector Camacho, had Bramble taking care of business against Rosario. Because there were questions about Rosario's inability to finish because he had Camacho hurt twice and couldn't get the job done. And people wonder how he was going to be going into that fight with Bramble. It didn't last long because Rosario's we know the theory of boxing. The last thing to go with a fighter is a punch. And one thing Edwin Rosario always had was the punch. And he showed it when he put the right cross through the guard and put Livingstone Bramble on all fours to get him counted out to win a lightweight championship. There's one angle of it. Angle number 2. It was the main event. Hector Camacho against Cornelius Boza Edwards. Here's the real mystery. How will Hector Camacho come out after what happened against Edwin Rosario 3.5 months before at Madison Square Garden? He gets the early knockdown, but just like he did after he got hurt by Edwin Rosario, Camacho resorts to jab, jab, clinch, and just clinches his way to a unanimous decision win against a faded Boza Edwards. The story with this doubleheader, I've said this before, you don't know what happens to a guy's psyche when something like that happened. We talk about the Camacho-Rosario fight of June 13, 1986. A lot of questions all over the place, bigger mysteries before, during, and after this doubleheader when he spun off what took place on the night of June 13, 1986. Edwin Rosario basically, this time, unlike Camacho, stepped on the gas, took care of business, knocked Hector Camacho, knocked Livingstone Bramble, and to an extent Hector Camacho, out of a multi-million-dollar unification payday at the time. But Hector Camacho, his first fight post-Rosario, basically resorted to the safety-first approach that started with this particular fight. As I said before, you don't know what happens when a fighter gets hit. When Hector Camacho got hit by Edwin Rosario in rounds 5 and 11 with those left hooks, he was a different fighter. And even though he got the early knockdown, it looked like he was going to wipe out Boza Edwards. He got timid again, went back to jab, clinch, just spun away, and just not let Boza Edwards hit him. Got a unanimous decision win. Biggest lookout was Boza Edwards was basically a bit shopworn at that time, given the two fights Boza Edwards had with Bobby Chacon. Actually, for you people in the YouTube community, watch those two fights. Classics. High-level action both ways, Chacon and Boza Edwards. But this was the first fight for Hector Camacho post Edwin Rosario, and everyone wanted to know the psyche. Maybe in hindsight, when we talk about what Camacho was after the Rosario fight, we should have seen it starting with this fight. Because when he fought Bazooka Limon 3 years before this, and he floored Limon in the first round, he went after him. Got the knockout, won the world title. He had Cornelius Boza Edwards dropped early round of the fight with the flurry, but couldn't finish the job. Went to the jab, clinch, as the same way he did to survive the Edwin Rosario fight after Rosario hurt him. And that basically was the career of Hector Camacho moving forward after this fight. Now, there's the speculation that Camacho lost weight in his legs because he had to lose pounds to make the 135-pound limit. That's more theory than anything else. But when you think of these two fighters after that fight of June 13, 1986, and you look at this doubleheader, maybe this own way you can say both guys were never the same. I mean, we knew it with Hector Camacho. We knew it with Hector Camacho when he got hit, because I always said, you don't know what happens to a fighter's psyche when he gets hit. When Hector Camacho got hit by Edwin Rosario in round 5, that left hook that had him walling all over the ring for about 2 minutes, you knew that was it. And for Edwin Rosario, he didn't get the win over Camacho, but maybe theoretically he's that old lose the battle but win the war, or win the war and lose the battle, or whatever you want to call it. For Edwin Rosario, maybe his last finest hour, because he knocked Bramble out of the payday, won a lightweight title, and many thought we might have been able to spin off a rematch between the two. Hector Camacho basically said he didn't want any part of it, and we know why. What happened June 13, 1986? He wasn't the same ever again. Which raises the question, should there have been a rematch? And if so, why wasn't there? Well, let's start with this. There's a fighter in the middle there named Julio Cesar Chavez that came up the block and just beat the brakes off of Edwin Rosario in 87 and sent Hector Camacho ducking for the next 5 years. And then we know what happened in 92 when those two went at it. Let's knock that part out of the way real quick. But after Rosario beat Bramble and Camacho beat Boza Edwards, and the payday of Camacho Bramble just went down the tubes. And you wonder now, maybe there should have been, but maybe in hindsight, maybe there shouldn't have been. Because the damage was done June 13th, 1986, when that left hook of Rosario starts Camacho. But it's also the epitome of what Edwin Rosario was himself after that fight. Because he was good enough to get to a certain point in his career. But when he wanted to get to the next level, the higher level to get to that point, he couldn't get it done. Because I said, in rounds 5 and 11 of the Camacho fight, he had him hurt, ready to go. He learned his lesson against Bramble when he had Bramble hurt early, and then the right hand that put Bramble on all fours to put him down and out for the count. But of course, Bramble made the mistake standing in front of Rosario, But maybe everybody's saying this should have been a rematch. The opportunity was there. They both had lightweight titles. Winner would have been the undisputed, or at least claimed 2/3 of the undisputed titles at that time. Maybe when you see what happened to Hector Camacho afterwards, and even the mind of Edwin Rosario, maybe in their minds, their best bet was to have never had one. I mean, maybe they should have, but maybe they shouldn't have. That's one of the bigger mysteries when it comes to this, especially when we consider what took place in New York City, June 13th, 1986, when the left hook of Edwin Rosario in round 5 that just starts Hector Camacho and just pretty much ended him. Because the Camacho, we knew at that point, was done. I mean, the Macho Time mantra wasn't the same after the Rosario fight as it was before it. But maybe Rosario's biggest win of his career was basically that, taking the Macho out of Hector Camacho. And I think from his point of view, and we look at the interviews he did after the fight, that was more than gratification for him. Because he knew the damage was done. He knew it didn't matter what he did, anything afterwards, doesn't take away the satisfaction of that left hook that starts Hector Camacho in round 5, that ended Macho Time in his eyes. That was his satisfaction and his gratification. He could take away a lot of pride out of that fight. But what he did when he starts Hector Camacho with that hook, basically was probably his crowning glory. And you could probably say, even though he did manage to win a couple world titles, Rosario never got anywhere near close to that. Because think of what Hector Camacho was before the Rosario fight. I mean, he sent it to one of the better fighters pound for pound after he just paintbrushed Jose Luis Ramirez effortlessly. And Camacho was a sizable favorite. And Edwin Rosario twice had Camacho running and holding on. Maybe the best reason why we didn't have the rematch from this point of view was it's one of those things where even though he didn't get the decision, I thought Camacho was the right winner of that fight. Rosario won the war in one sense, that he ended Macho Time for his own personal gratification. Granted, he had as much of an inconsistent career after the Camacho fight as Camacho did, but Edwin Rosario's gratification will forever be changing Hector Camacho forever. And we talk about the pure talent of Hector Camacho before the Rosario fight and what he was after the fight. Because we talk about just pure talent, Hector Camacho was it. I mean, just pull up his fights against John Montes, Bazooka Limon, and Jose Luis Ramirez. That was his brilliance. Then he meets Edwin Rosario, and you want to talk about getting topsy-turvy? Maybe for that time, no one was more topsy-turvy as Hector Camacho was after the Rosario fight. And it started as a part of this HBO doubleheader with him and Rosario when he looked like he was going to wipe out Cornelius Boza Edwards early, but didn't finish the job. Just went back to the jab clinch to a unanimous decision and was satisfied with just getting a decision win. Maybe when we look back at what Camacho was after Rosario, you see the Rosario knocked it out of him. But the downturn probably slowly but surely started with this, because that was a guy Camacho would have wiped out before the Rosario fight. Pull up how he wiped out Bazooka Limon and John Montes. I mean, when they were down and out. But Edwards was down, but Camacho just let him survive the distance. And a subsequent fight on the USA's Tuesday night fights on free TV against a journeyman named Reyes Cruz, maybe the capper, because it was the first round of that fight where Camacho dropped his guard and Reyes Cruz was perfectly timed Camacho with the right cross and sent Camacho face first onto the canvas. Although Camacho got up to win a head scratcher of a decision on that night, which some people thought Camacho got a gift. That Rosario fight did more damage to Camacho, and we already know how much damage it did. Maybe that fight did more damage than people thought because there was no way whatsoever he could have come close to what he was before then. Granted, his life outside the ring didn't help him either, being Hector Camacho. But inside the ring, you can tell, starting with this night with Boza Edwards, that the end was coming. That's why he fought so sporadically and inconsistently after the Rosario fight. It started with this one, with Boza Edwards, and of course, bottomed out for good in 92 when Chavez has pounded him all over the ring into a decision win. Hector Camacho and Edwin Rosario, their careers are more parallel than you would think. Not just because they're from the same country of Puerto Rico. Actually, they were born, I think, like 15 miles apart. Basically, same divisions, same approaches, maybe in an odd, different way. But at the same sentence, when they were coming up, they had it. But when it comes to trying to get to the next level, they didn't have it. And both had inconsistent and sporadic careers moving forward. They did collect quite a few world titles along the way, but never got close to what they did on that night of June 13, 1986. And maybe this doubleheader that had Rosario and Camacho on HBO 39 years ago in Miami was the beginning of it. Yes, Rosario starts Livingstone Bramble in 2 rounds, but you can tell he wasn't consistent enough. Remember, before that, he was obliterated by Jose Luis Ramirez in a rematch. But maybe why we didn't have a Camacho-Rosario rematch, I think it's safe for both fighters. Their confidence was messed. We know from the Camacho angle. But maybe from the Rosario angle, just the sake that he ended Macho time and just turned him into Hector Camacho in his eyes was a satisfaction and gratification he needed the rest of the way, and that was despite the official result. And we've seen it all the time. Fighters who don't get the official result can have some gratification in their loss. And that's what Hector Camacho had when we talk about his loss to Edwin Rosario. Ed Rosario had when we talk about his loss to Hector Camacho. Because he moved on to beat Livingstone Bramble, but a year later ran into a buzzsaw named Julio Cesar Chavez and just got the dog Willikers beaten out of him. Managed to pick up a couple world titles till he bottomed out for good in 1992 against an unknown Japanese fighter named Akinobu Hironaka, who went Tyson Spinks on Rosario in Mexico. Maybe from the Camacho-Rosario fight in 1986 to this doubleheader, were signs to come for both fighters when we talk about their inconsistencies career-wise. I mean, both were good enough to get to a certain point. And you can win any world title in the sport, especially with the alphabet expenditure that was taking place at that point. But when you talk about going from that level to a higher level, neither guy could do it. Because they had opportunities. I mean, they got wins, but it was like something was missing for both fighters. Rosario did beat Bramble for a belt, but, it was a belt. Not Bramble out of a major payday with Camacho. But when Camacho heard that Rosario might be the next opponent, we know the psyche of Hector Camacho at the end of the day. God rest the souls of Hector Camacho and Edwin Rosario. I mean, here's the thing I call the boxing community out for decades on this. Because they think what they see on television is the same as what happens in the ring. And Camacho and Rosario might be the perfect examples of this. I said this, when I talked about that fight in June of 86. A fighter's psyche is different in its own way than you would think. Because when they're in that ring, it's not like football or basketball or anything. You don't have, teammates or coaches or coaching staff to help them out to try and build the mental confidence. It's a one-on-one sport, one-on-one. And what happens in that ring is one-on-one. Yes, you can have your trainers give you advice. You can have your trainers prop you up. But at the heat of the battle, it's one-on-one. And we talk about one-on-one, what took place with Hector Camacho and Edwin Rosario, June 13th, 1986. The psyche of both fighters changed forever. I mean, it's easy to say, but you don't know what goes on in their minds. Maybe the perception is it's easier for Camacho. We talk about the left hook that Edwin Rosario starts him with in round 5 that hurt him. Maybe the psyche of Edwin Rosario is the fact that he can take the gratification and the satisfaction that he ended Macho Time in his eyes. Because Macho Time was an it thing for the longest time. Edwin Rosario says, I starched him, but guess what? I might have not got the decision, but I did end Macho Time. Maybe in hindsight, he truly did. Because that's what happened with these two. And this doubleheader was probably the epitome of it, and it started the sporadic careers of both moving forward. Because Rosario did win a championship, but maybe not being able to get to that level the way he did in the Camacho loss was a bit of his downfall. But maybe he was more than satisfied with just being the guy that ended Macho Time, and that's why his career wound up the way it did. Just a phenomenal fighter. But that doubleheader, basically, it was pegged to be a doubleheader featuring Bramble and Camacho because they had a tentative agreement for a unification fight had they taken care of business. But Edwin Rosario, fresh off what he did to Hector Camacho, had other ideas. And because of those other ideas, Hector Camacho's plan went down the drain. Because we mentioned Edwin Rosario, Hector Camacho acts different. And we know why. Sometimes everybody needs to just understand the fighter's psyche more than anything else. It's easy for you guys to do it today on the internet and social media, but 90% of you guys don't have the balls to step in the ring. Hector Camacho and Edwin Rosario were two guys with balls to step in the ring, and you don't know what happens when they get hit. And I can point to many more examples than just these two. That the psyche mentally is different than you think. Sean O'Grady, the longtime analyst of USA's Tuesday Night Fights, summed it up perfectly. Boxing is 90% mental, 10% physical. It's the mental hurdles that Camacho and Rosario had a hard time getting over after that fight of 86, and this doubleheader 39 years ago was a perfect example of it. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sir Hunt on X. No show tonight. I will be back after the weekend with a full slate involving NFL talk. Here in a minute, if you follow me on the X platform, I will be live on the NFL Gridiron to talk about more NFL topics. And for those of you who missed any part of this show or some of the other ones I have in the past, you can always listen to them on the Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify apps. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. You take care of yourself first, all the good things will come your way. Take care of you and you only. That's the only thing that matters. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else in this walk of life matters. Always focus on you. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless. Enjoy the 3-day weekend. I will be back Monday, and I will see you then.